And as always, before we start, I just want to do a quick Patreon shout out. This week's Patreon shout out goes to Daniel Johnson. Daniel, thank you very much for supporting us over on the podcast and as well over on Patreon. It means a lot. It helps a lot of our addictions. David's plastic surgery addiction, my popper addiction, Yutaka's random any sort of memorabilia he can pick up addiction, and Liam's drinking addiction. So thank you so much. You do continue to feed us, and when we all die because of those addictions, it'll be your fault.
Welcome to the Horror Hour.
We all go a little mad. We get you. The dead Here's Johnny.
Hello and welcome back to the Horror Hour, the place where we discuss, debate, and disagree on all things horror. I'm one of your hosts, George, and today I'm joined by my real mother and father, and that is Wes and Shay from Petty Pumpkins. How are you both?
Hello.
Oh my god, hello, son.
We
daughter,
are
whatever you want to be.
excited to have this little family reunion.
Yes. It's
So-
been a long time coming.
It has, because I was thinking it probably, I know you obviously, we did the underrated horror, like, I think it was like 7 months ago now.
Yeah.
And then you obviously did Terrifier 2 review with Stephen and Yutaka's, and that was like 6 months ago. So it's been a long time coming, but I'm glad that it's just family tonight because
Yes, of
and I've
course.
got in admiration, I have my pumpkin mug in
Oh my
celebration,
god.
because it's
Pumpkins
always
all
Halloween.
around.
Yeah.
Didn't get the memo, but it's
Oh,
fine.
it's cute, so that's fun. But
Okay.
if you hadn't guessed by the title, we are going to be talking today about the Paranormal Activity franchise. Now, disclaimer: we're talking about Paranormal Activity 1 through to Ghost Dimension. We're not talking about Next of Kin. Petty Pumpkins haven't seen it yet, but also it's not really relevant because it's a sort of, again, I don't want to spoil it for them, but it's not in line with the story of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So we'll leave that out for now. But we are going to be talking about everything in between. We're going to be talking about the men. We're talking about Queen Icon Casey. We're going to be talking about the Dumb to Sit, all of it, the witches. It's going to be iconic. So, I mean, let's get into it because I want to ask you. Obviously, you reacted to all of these, which I was like, I feel like it's one of those franchises that I don't see that many people react to. A lot of people react to the first one and then don't carry on. So when I saw that you reacted to all of them, I was like, thank God. Did you always want to react to the whole series, or were you like, oh, let's see one and see how we get on?
I think we wanted to do the whole series. I had originally already seen it,
Right, yeah.
when it first came out on DVD, but he had never seen any of them, and I had only seen the first one.
Mhm.
So I was like, why not? Like, let's just react, see how it goes, and I think that it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love a franchise, so I'm
Yeah.
willing. Even like sometimes you can watch the first one and it might not be your thing, but like the second one could be so much better. So I'll usually give like at least the first two a shot before I
Yeah.
give up. But yeah, I mean, I had never seen any of them, and I am obsessed now.
We haven't given
Like,
up yet.
fully, yeah, no.
Yes.
Even like I kind of think not that they get better as they go, but kind of more interesting in some ways. So I think it just isn't as fun to not keep going with this franchise because there's just so much more info given to you. And
Well, really, if you don't
Throwback.
go through the whole franchise, you really gotta like guess what's gonna happen because they have to wrap it up for you.
Yeah.
Which they do eventually.
Yeah. Well,
They get
do
to
they?
the- they
They
get-
kind of do.
They get to the point.
We'll get there.
But, you know.
Do they?
So I can't, because so for me it was funny because my background with Paranormal Activity is I remember going to see the first one in the cinema because I think it came out in 2009 here in the UK. So I was like 13, and I remember seeing the trailer and I was like, oh my God. And this was even pre me watching this was my first, well, it was my first ever horror movie in a cinema, and it was
Oh
my
my
first
God.
introduction to found footage because I'd never. So when I watched that trailer when it came out, and it was like, and I remember the trailer like it was yesterday, and it showed like there was like we did this screening for these people in California, and it was like all the reactions of the audience, and I was like, oh my God, and it was like based on true events, and I was like, this is as gay. I had no idea what Blair Witch was found footage, and I was like, this is real. Oh my God. So I remember going to see it with my auntie and uncle and just being like, obviously again because it was the first horror movie I'd seen in the cinema, and that is a great movie for atmosphere because it's such a slow builder, which, you know, can sometimes at times throughout some of the films you're like, all right, yeah, just let's get to the next. But the first after with a lot of the films, after the first two nights, you're like, okay, we need to get past these first couple of nights before we start seeing the stuff. But obviously then that was, so I was obsessed with it. And then obviously all of them, I think bar one, they all came out consecutively in October. Now, obviously, I'm a Halloween baby, so every year, me and like 10 or 15 of my friends went to see it as a tradition, and went to see every single one in cinema. We used to sneak in KFC in our bags and jackets and sit there with like full buckets, just like it was very Brenda in Scary Movie.
You gotta have the greasy fingertips. I love that. Yes.
It was so good, and yeah, so to me, it's always just been like I just loved it from the beginning, and it always got. There was always backlash against it. Even the first one, people were like, "Oh, it's stupid" or "It's boring," but for me, it was never like that. And I think I don't know how you both feel. I mean, again, it might be different because whereas you had only seen it more recently, but it had a huge impact on horror in terms of found footage, and because pre that, found footage wasn't really doing anything. Like they'd kind of lost its way after a big, you know, after 97, I was like, let's make a found footage film. And then it kind of just went and like kind of started to die with what was it? Not Day of the Dead, Diary of the Dead with George A. Romero, which was great. But the late early 2000s kind of dipped. But I feel like this reset a corner of horror that hadn't been sort of touched in a while.
It really catapulted found footage into everyone's like forefront, and you could see how you could be like creative with found footage, because suddenly there's movies like from the viewpoint of people's webcams, their cell phones, they're being either recorded on home video or from security tape. There's just so many different ways and angles that the Paranormal Activity franchise really like framed their movies. So it's like everyone just like nitpicked from the different elements that they had. And it really, and like now we have like what, like host, missing, like there's so many like
they're like subgenres of this like found footage genre now. I think that like what you were saying, the way that they each one kind of does a different thing, has a different way that they, you know, show what's going on. I think that that's the most interesting thing about this franchise to me, is just seeing how each movie is going to like work around that. So I mean, I just love it. I think that it's so interesting, and it's like you said, a pioneer for. I didn't realize until I went and watched these that this really is like the impetus for what started this craze. And you, like you said, you can see how in other movies now, how like the way that they did it was influenced by the way that Paranormal Activity did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that first one, like, I mean, it was, I should have Googled it, should have been prepared, but it was like, it's still one of the most like, it made like for the amount of money that cost, it's like one of
profitable movies,
it's one of the most profitable movies, right?
Like ever. And I think when you can actually watch it now, because it was filmed pre Ghost, next of kin, because it kind of teases it at the end. But I've got my little, it's sitting here where I can't do my hand. This thing, which is the I Died At, it's the Paranormal Activity, it's the Blu-ray, the Chills collection, so it's all of the movies, and it comes with a DVD documentary called Unknown Dimension, which starts from the very first film all the way to the present film, and talks about like the impact that it had. You see all the old tapes from the original film, like loads of deleted scenes. You see the auditions of Katie and Mika and how they audition. It's like such a
that's so interesting.
It's really, if you like Paranormal Activity, it's great. And also it talks about in general like the horror community and how it, again, the impact it had on culture and, you know, horror, because everyone was suddenly like, oh, it took it back to that thing of, is it real or is it not again, which I think hadn't happened in a long time, because it was just, that first film was so, you know, I don't want to say cheap, but it was made, quite easily.
Mhm.
And
Well,
so
it was made to look real.
yes.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like why it really works, because the other ones, as they go, they get a little flashier with how they do things, but the first one is just so like bare bones. I think that that's part of what makes it feel so authentic.
I thought it was real when I first watched it. Me and my mom, we were like so freaked out. We were like, there's no way. And then I went to school and we were talking about it, and my theater teacher was like, it's not real, because I went to high school with Katie. He went to high
Oh
school
my
with
God,
Katie.
that's so
I would
cool.
have
And so I was like, oh my God, it's
Are you
not
still
real.
in touch?
She's literally like,
If you'd have known
where
that
is she?
now that the Katie stands have come through, like.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that. The first
Full
film,
queen.
those two, Amika and Katie, are just, again, I think that leads to why it feels so real, is their relationship and their, and a lot of it, obviously, they had the scripted lines, but a lot of it was improvisation. They just feel like such real characters. And I don't know if it's because they were typecast in this, but I think it is a bit of the typecast found footage thing, where they haven't done that much, when I feel like they could have done loads. And because they are in that film, they are both so, like, you believe they're a real couple.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Definitely.
It's so I don't know, but I loved that in that first film, like you say, it was just so bare bones, and that it did feel real, because that's something that the franchise, obviously, with the success of it did, it evolved. And do you think then, as a whole, I mean, we're going to touch on all of them in a sense, but as a whole, how do you feel like it was very consistent as a franchise, pretty much?
Yeah, I think the first watch through, I thought it was very consistently confusing, but once you go back and actually start paying attention to the details of the cult and the rituals and what the end goal is, it all comes together much better. And I feel like an actual watch through of 1 through 5, even 6, really ties that all up for you. But if you're just watching like out of order here or there, I could see people being like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, that's how we felt, because we were watching them every few months. And so then it would be like, especially the marked ones. No, not the marked ones. The Paranormal Activity 4. I was so confused about the difference between, like, who's Hunter?
Hunter,
who's
Robbie, and Wyatt.
Who's
why
Wyatt?
is Katie across the street? And
Yeah.
where did Hunter go? Like, what happened? Yeah, there's a lot of questions that they answer, but then I'm still like, what?
They do answer them. You just have to be like listening for it.
Yeah.
And then also like keeping in mind that all the stuff that's happened before, so it all ties together. And so yeah, I do think it is ultimately consistent for sure. But I think that they maybe could have done a little bit better, better at tying the threads along the way.
Story, maybe. Well, it's because I felt like it was retcon. Like, I feel like it was always like building upon itself and having to go back and create something where something wasn't. So when you see Hector and Jesse showing up in Katie and Mika's kitchen, you're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Like, if you know, you know.
Of course. It's like, I think for a franchise that was never really probably ever considered to be a franchise, I think it does a good job, because obviously they had, and I suppose there are a few horror franchises like that, because you never know whether it's going to be a hit or not. But you can tell that they were writing it as they were going along for the main part. I feel around maybe 3 onwards, they kind of thought, okay, we can sort of, they created
storyboarded it.
Yeah. And obviously when they brought in like the cult of witches and stuff, they were planning out for maybe more and more, which I think helped. And I think that's why maybe it does feel at times like they, even after a few watches, it does get confusing. You have to really think about everything to kind of get it, because they were just going, I'll put this here and this here. And as a franchise, it is already confusing, because you're like going back and forward in time, literally by the end of it. Like Ghost Dimension gets like, you're like, and I think that's something that they always, any film struggles with time travel, because you're like, how is this, if it's not explained properly, it just kind of goes over your head. And I think these films as well don't always feel like films that you need to concentrate on. You think, oh, it's a horror film about, what, or just sit down and watch it, and then you start to watch it and you're like, what is happening?
This actually has a storyline.
Mhm.
Like, you maybe expect that it would just be like a, cut to jump scare, which it does that, but and I do think that like maybe the jumpy editing also has something to do with how it could be kind of confusing, because 1 minute, like the scenes don't necessarily build all the time. Like you might just cut to like a really important conversation when like the scene before you were just watching someone like doing the dishes or whatever. But I also think that they are consistent in the way that they're consistently good for the most part. I don't want it to sound like I'm hating on them or don't, or anything. Like I said, once I understood, then I really like them once you realize how fully like threaded they all are. So,
Yeah.
Sorry, there's people mowing next door.
I can't hear it, so you're all good.
Oh, good.
That's
good.
That's I was like, what's going on?
Great to hear.
Yeah. But then, so I'm interested to know, have you thus far ranked them in your head?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I had a ranking after we watched after we watched the 6th, then I came up with my ranking. But then to prep for this, we actually went back and rewatched our reactions.
So did I.
Because that's good. Because it's like interesting to see like how did we feel in that moment, and like after rewatching the reactions, my ranking has changed.
Okay.
So which like I don't know, it's what it was in my memory versus like now kind of knowing the threads and everything and like knowing what's important. I don't know, it changed. So do you want me to say it?
Well, I don't know, because I don't know if you're going to ever do a video where you do a breakdown.
I mean, probably, but I don't mind saying it.
Yeah.
My opinion changes.
You can go into more detail on your video. You can just give me the overhead.
Okay, so I would say now, post, doing some research. I could go backwards, I guess.
I don't know if you're.
All right, so I'm gonna say my number 6 would be Paranormal Activity 2.
Okay.
Primarily just because I really did not like the dad. He just really bothered me.
Daniel.
Yeah.
I was distracted by how much I disliked him.
Yeah.
And then I would say my 5th favorite would be Ghost Dimension. My 4th favorite would be Paranormal Activity 4. My 3rd favorite would be Marked Ones. My 2nd would be the original Paranormal Activity, and then Paranormal Activity 3 is my number 1.
Wow. So we actually have the exact same ranking, except I have Ghost Dimension last.
Okay.
I feel like the other 5 do a better job of scaring you, whereas 6 is actually seeing the Paranormal Activity. I don't know that actually scared me. It kind of felt more cheesy than
it feels like kind of disconnected in a way. Like it doesn't feel like the other 5. I feel like I'll feel like a Paranormal Activity movie, and this one it feels like it was made by a different studio, different everything. I don't know.
I think it's because we'd never seen the Paranormal Activity be so visceral, like
maybe
in front of you. And they were like, "Oh, well, we picked up the old camera, and you can." I'm like, "Well, then why weren't we seeing it before?"
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but I liked it more than I expected.
Yeah.
Based off what people had said.
Well, Wes got my. I was so visceral in my reaction. I think Wes, you must be saying, "What do you think of it?" And I said like a voice note, which we'll talk about that last one in a second. So my ranking for them is, so going backwards to first, would be Ghost Dimension 2, 4, 1, 3, and the Marked Ones is my
Marked Ones
favorite.
When we were like watching our reaction to the Marked Ones, I was like, wait, this movie is actually like really good. It felt different.
Yeah, and it felt like the first movie. I mean, like 4 kind of made it, all of them felt bigger in scale as a sense. I was literally, because I was watching your Paranormal Activity 2 reaction just before, where you were like, oh, the lighting budget's gone up. You could tell, because you were like, the lighting definitely changed from the first one. But that 5th one just felt like there was more of a universe, because you were suddenly stepping away from this family or this sort of, they kind of said Wayne 4, but you were still with Hunter. It's really step away from this family and exploring the universe of Paranormal Activity, which is something that I was like, yes, this is what I want. And again, it just felt a bit more, and just purely the fact that we got, old grannies being shot through the sky with
Incredible.
is just like iconic. And then to end with that, I remember watching that ending being like, oh my God, this is Katie's house, and just losing my mind. Like the only thing that could have made that even better, and again, we'll touch on this again, is obviously if Dennis had turned up, because we kept getting the kids. And I was like, where is Dennis? We saw Grandma Lois on a photo, and I was like,
oh, we
Severely
needed
missed
that.
Dennis, we miss that boy every day.
I think about him quite a bit.
It's the best. So I would say that is mine. But I agree with you. I think overall it was, for a franchise that was going as it went, kind of making itself up as it went along in a way, it really did do well. And you've got to think about how many found footage films have 6 other films after them? I don't think there's any.
Yeah.
If I can really think about it.
No.
And especially ones that have done consistently well as found footage horror movies go at the box office. Because you'll always get like stuff like Blair Witch, when they're like, oh, we won't do found footage, we'll do hey, I love Book of Shadows, but it's very different. So I think we have to, for all the hate that it again seemingly got, which to me was always bizarre. People just say, oh, it's boring, I don't get it. And I was like, have you seen it? And they're like, no. And you'd be like, they just seen the first one and thought it was boring. I'm like, people need to watch the rest of them to kind of understand this story that they're threading out, which is why I want to talk about this right now, is why I think that the ending of the last of Ghost Dimension kind of just fell a little flat. Because again, I haven't watched that film since I saw it, and I've only watched your, like, last time I watched it was your reaction. I watched your reaction again the other day, and I did enjoy more elements of it watching it back, because I felt bad after I sent. So FYI, after Paperman had watched it, I got a message saying, "Hey, what do you think of the last film?" And I sent quite a visceral voice message to us that was like, "This is the worst thing that's ever happened to this." And he probably thought, "What the hell?"
I was laughing so hard. No, I loved it.
But I just remember it was and I have calmed down a bit since then. But I just remember leaving the cinema thinking, this hasn't really done. It kind of went off on its own thing and didn't tie. And I get the ending of Toby becoming real. It was kind of like, okay, we're tying this off. But for me, the biggest thing, and I remember just leaving the cinema being like, is this a joke? The fact that Katie wasn't in that film. And I tweeted her at the time, this tweet is now deleted, but here's a bit of tea for you. I tweeted her at the time saying, oh my God, I literally was out to come out of the cinema saying, oh my God, I can't believe Katie was in this film. What the hell? And she said, I wasn't asked.
That's so doesn't make any sense.
Which is bizarre considering that she was the pioneer of the franchise in a sense that you were always expecting that cameo, whether it be 2 seconds or whatever. Like,
she is the franchise to me. Yeah.
To all of us.
I agree, which is why she is like, and I'll never, and I think it sticks with me forever in that first film. Her scream at the end of that first film. Is just so, like, I know we always talk about Vera Farmiga and Mia Goth and Jenna Ortega with like these street, but like nobody puts enough, like, I know what's to say this as saying a respect on Katie Featherson as a performer in horror that they should do.
Mm-hmm. She can do everything. She's so good. Like, her and Mika are they're kind of like fun and they're joking around and she's sarcastic, but then she's vulnerable and then she's scary and then she's like holding Hunter and loves him. Like, it's just, she's so good at everything. And like, no one talks about her the way that we should. I agree.
Absolutely agree. And I think that's one of the main reasons that the last film fell flat to me, because I was like, this doesn't, like you said, it doesn't feel like a Paranormal Activity film because she's not. And I know we had the younger Katie and Kristi, and that was great, and Grandma Lois. But I think they marked ones kind of was really good. But then because of the time travel aspect, which again I think in any film can make things confusing. It got to a point where in the next film they just kind of used it as an excuse for everything that happened. So, well, there's time travel, and you're like, yeah, I know, but it's got to be done in a way that makes sense, and you've got to play it out. Like, I feel like that film could have been 2 films. Like, we should have had a film which was set from in the 90s of Katie and Kristi as young teens learning their powers, and then maybe, you know, there being another family or someone else involved that kind of, you know, gets caught up in their mishaps, because there is about 20-25 minutes, you can find it on YouTube, of deleted scenes from the Ghost Dimension, which are all Katie and Kristi Young. They're in the house from Paranormal Activity 3, all doing like practicing their powers and everything. And I'm like, I don't understand why none of this was in. I don't care
That's the
about
most interesting
Layla playing a
part.
flute.
No. That's wild. Yeah, I completely agree that could have been its own movie, and that would have been, because I want more about the cult anyways. Like the midwives, I want to know more about them besides like the lore that people are discovering from research.
So like with the lore, so I was like, the whole time I've been like, why is all this happening, what's happening? So then I had to, you know, break it down, where it's a cult that is controlled by the midwives, and they basically brainwash and sacrifice their daughters so that they will grow up and have children, and that their firstborn will be hopefully a male that they can brainwash and possess into this demon army of possessed men, which sounds very gay to me.
Like what are they doing?
But at the end I'm like, but why?
Yes.
Like
what is the point? What's the army doing?
What are they going to do? And did they do it? Did they achieve it? We don't know.
Exactly. And we'll never know, because the last film did so poorly and Ghost Dimension didn't do well that they kind of said Jason Blum literally. And by the way, guys, if you don't know this, Paranormal Activity started Blumhouse. That is the film that gave Blumhouse its name.
I thought that.
Steven Spielberg watched it and rewrote the ending of Paranormal Activity, the original one, because obviously there were 3 endings to the first one. So this franchise has done amazing things, but then Jason Blum at the end says, oh no, actually we're going to pursue other avenues. And I'm like, I've said it a few times on this channel, I'm like, I know this sounds like I'm going to sound like Richie from Scream 5, Richie, sorry, but I'm like, if you'd come to me, I would tell you how to end this franchise. Like, it's really simple. We go back to the time in the late 80s when we've got the kids, the time that we were seeing in those cameras, in the videotapes from Ghost Dimension. And we see the final ritual. We see adult Katie. We see Hunter. We see her bringing Hunter back into this. Because, I'm sorry, what happened? The end of Paranormal Activity 4 jump scares you with that whole crew of women. And then suddenly, where are they in Ghost Dimension?
Yeah.
Where the hell?
They're like this cult, this huge cult. I'm like, well, why aren't they descending that? Could you imagine if in the end of that film, when Toby's going crazy, like all of the doors and all of the windows are just surrounded by the coven, and they're all like breaking into the house. Like there was so much they could have done that I feel, and I do actually mention this on that documentary, the guy who did it was like, yeah, I kind of was, you know, and I wanted to try something different and didn't work. And I said, well, you trying something different killed the franchise, because we didn't get any more after that.
And it's wild, because, you know, these movies don't have to be expensive to make.
No.
And like, if you just take the time to like storyboard it out and like think about, okay, what can we do to like tie this all up? Like, just one more movie. Like it like, what do you mean you're pursuing other stuff? Like, this doesn't seem like a hard task to have to pursue, really.
It's not really. We just throw a bunch of women in some random clothes and stand them around the house and have them do some stuff. It's not like we needed more of the cult.
We did. And then to have the women all standing in that huge ass lounge, all surrounding them, the lights dim, they part, and Katie walks through them like to
Wow.
I'm writing it for you, Blumhouse.
So easy.
To
Like,
collect
it's literally right there.
her, and then she says,
George.
like, you know, mommy, and then takes her, and it's like, that's the end of the film.
George, they needed you.
This man has thought about this.
I've done nothing since I left Ghost Dimension. I've for years, because that came out in like 2017. And I remember it made me laugh when you said about the seeing. I remember the trailer, and it was like, because it was when 3D was coming back in with the new glasses, and it was like, see the activity, and I was like, none of us asked for this.
We didn't want to actually.
We want to see Katie, and we want to see the midwives. We don't need, because it took away. You can imagine yourself what Toby or what the demons look like in your own mind. I don't need to see Voldemort like
I
popping
didn't
up.
need to see Toby.
No.
Toby, he was ugly.
He was scary.
He was not cute.
And yeah, it just
Just not
didn't.
feeling it.
And also the one thing they didn't, I suppose, again, you got to think there was several. Something that I always think I would have liked explained better is how many demons were about at the same time, because obviously, or was Toby so powerful that he could control multiple people? Because at one point, obviously, you know, after the whole situation in 2, then he's with Katie, but then there's then two spirits in, at least 2 spirits in 4, because you've got the little kid spirit who's just following everyone around, and then you've got the one that they're always talking to who's up here. Then you've got whoever is possessing Katie, then whoever's possessing Robbie. Like there's quite a few, and I think this is stuff that, again, in Ghost Dimension, I was like, oh, maybe they're gonna like explain. You could have done like a scene where it explained like all the different.
Explain Toby. Like, where does Toby come from? Are there more of Toby?
It's too much to ask for.
Is Toby one person, or is he like? So when at the end it was like, oh, he's real now. I was like, what's he gonna do?
That's what I want to know. What next? What?
Yeah. And why?
Like, is it the end of the world? Like, I get if it's going to be like Antichrist or something. Like, give us. I mean,
okay.
We could have had a season of Apocalypse, you know, American Horror Story Apocalypse, but like
Just
that could have
convoluted.
been. Well, exactly.
Like you could even like they could still even make this movie like post Toby as a human or whatever he is, and that's like a whole avenue that they already created for themselves to explore. Plus, they could like still tie up the ending nicely.
It sounds like they wanted to focus more on Toby than on Katie, which is
why not both?
Mistake.
I just say why not both?
Toby and Katie could have gotten married and had,
my God,
children. Who knows? You know, there was like so many opportunities for them.
It was like a missed. And let's talk then, because we've talked about Casey, we've talked about Toby. Let's just talk overall the characters in this franchise. Have you got I know one of them. Have you got faves? Give us some of your faves.
Oh my God.
Definitely. So obviously Dennis, like he's definitely our favorite. But like I love Martine.
Yes. She's an icon.
Queen and legend.
Yes.
She got that sage out so quick.
Yeah, she did.
Was like, oh, we are. And
she got fired for it.
Yeah. They let the wrong one go.
That's I don't know if this is a popular opinion. Personally, I really liked Alex.
I like her too.
You know.
Catherine Newton.
I don't know if it's because I just love Catherine Newton so much from Freaky.
Yeah.
But I liked her a lot as a protagonist.
That were saying, oh, she's so annoying. And,
okay. I thought she was interesting. I don't know.
Cute and fun.
Yeah, she was fun. And it was like a different kind of dynamic from the adults or the children that we've been watching.
Well, because she was onto it. She was,
was investigating
what's happening. Her and her boyfriend were like trying to figure it out, but just they went across the street.
Yeah, she shouldn't have done that. But you know, I thought that Anna was really interesting. Would love to get a movie about Anna, you know, or like Anna's you know, she was obviously recruiting Jesse's mom. Like I would like to know more about Jesse's mom. Like that could be interesting. Like but I don't know.
I think that we could have elaborated more on the marked ones characters. We could have had another movie of them, actually.
Yeah.
I think they didn't expect. I mean, that was directed and written by Christopher Landon, and
yes,
I feel like maybe he didn't expect how well, because a lot of people have. I mean, because obviously that was supposed to be, it was announced as a spin-off, and I remember at the end of Paranormal Activity 4 there was a post-credit scene, and I was like, "This is life-changing," and it was like a tiny little post-credit scene of them in like and it had none of the characters in, But it was just like in a Latino shop in Oxnard where they were talking about getting this demon out, and I was like, and it was going to be originally called the Oxnard tapes, I think. And I feel like maybe they just kind of were like, okay, we'll do this as a little fun thing and then we'll carry on. But it added so much and added a different, as I say, it opened up the universe. And I think all of those characters that they introduced there were so good and had their own. And I'm sorry, when that was like, I don't even know what to describe the moment that, because I missed when they were calling number, but the moment they turned up at that park and Ali Ray stepped out of that car and walked towards
Ali,
I was
yes.
like, that was my multiverse of madness. Like, it was like life-changing to me. I was like, I'm so glad that they're bringing these aspects back. So to me, again, like just hopping onto the ending, I was like, where is Ali? Ali had been doing all this research on, her parents had been killed because of this coven, essentially. You would think, and then they called later, oh yeah, she's busy right now. And I'm like, she wasn't busy, you just didn't, but they should have paid her everything to come back at the end to fight. And that's what I wanted to see in the last film. I was like, let's go back in time, let's have grown up Katie, let's have Hunter, let's have possessed Alex from the fourth film because she was taken in by the witches, let's have Ali rocking up with an absolutely causing havoc and sacrificing herself, causing the fire in the house that we know about from the 70s and saving Hunter's life. Anyway,
wow, yeah, no, that's I can like picture like all these women standing in a room together, all brought together because of Toby. Like, that would be iconic to see them like holding hands, like, standing strong, or whatever they're doing.
It's not too late.
It's not too late.
George, write the script.
I'll write it, and then we'll do a GoFundMe.
Like,
crowdsource. Let's go.
You both be producers on it, and we'll get.
Awesome.
Oh, sold. Immediately sold.
Because it was so good, but I'm trying to think of other characters that I really liked, and I mean, Ali was definitely one of them. At first when I watched it, I was kind of like, oh, she's a bit annoying, but then when I watched it a couple of times more, I was actually, compared to her dad, who was just like, I know we crap. Mika was a bit toxic, but the dad was just like so disparaging and just like. I was like,
I was like distracted from the movie because I hated him so much.
And then
truly,
once him and Ali decide to curse Katie, I was so done. I was like,
well, see, the thing is, like, I love, like, that's like, to me, I'm like, okay, I love. Well, save yourself, save your wife. So in a way, I'm like, okay, that's his best moment to me.
But I was just,
but of course, he fucked over Katie.
What? Kristi wasn't even that good of a mom, was she? Like,
she was like, oh god, okay. She was the Kourtney Kardashian of the family.
Oh my god,
nobody wanted to leave her kids with her. And I would have really liked to have seen. I mean, I know she got killed in the last one, but I would have really liked to have seen like grown up Kristi. Like, I would have just loved just a moment with some of these big characters coming back in a way that made sense. I mean, Kristi maybe wouldn't have made sense, but other characters, I say, like Ali and that, who could have come back and made the finale like this moment. And they're constantly throughout the first 3 films or whatever, they talk about this fire that happened at the house, and I'm like. So when they went at the end of Ghost Dimension, when they went through the portal and ended up at that house, I was like, so up until then I was kind of like, oh, but when we got to that moment, I was like, this is it. This is where I'm going to see the things that I've just named. We're going to see how the fire started and everything. And just none of that happened. And we went into a garage, and then suddenly Toby was like there, and I was like,
yeah,
why?
Opportunities.
And I don't want ever to feel like I'm crapping on this last movie, because I'm not, because it takes a lot to make a movie, but they just missed the mark when by that point the outline was there to do it. And so it got a little bit, I don't know, and like I said, it'll always be a missed opportunity. I think.
One other thing that I did think was interesting was like the dichotomy between adult Katie and Kristi when they were in the same situation, because Kristi was like so wouldn't really believe it, didn't want to engage with it, even though she obviously had this like training as a child, so she has to know. But then Katie, was so much more like kind of confrontational about it. But as children, I feel like Kristi was the one engaging with Toby more than Katie was. So it's just interesting to see how and why they did that.
Did they forget about all of that when they grew up? Because they grow up and they're like, oh, there's all this stuff happening in there. I'm like, well, don't you think it's because all the shit you've been doing for all these years?
I think that was because there's a couple of things that happen in the first few films that are said a few times that I think, again, I feel wish someone had picked up on that. And one of them is the mum. So in the first film, it's a flyaway comment, so you don't have to include it. But when he says, there's a dark energy here and anything negative will carry it. And then Mika says in passing, oh, and make sure not to invite your mum round again. So you're like, oh. But then in the second film, she says, so when they're talking, Katie and Kristi are talking, and Katie says to her, you've got to leave this alone, otherwise you're going to end up just like mum. Or mom, sorry. Do you understand? I love that line so much. You're going to end up just like mom. Do you understand me? Do you understand me? I know. Oh, it's so good. Because Katie's just iconic in that green blouse. Anyway. So, but like what? So I wanted to know in their mind what happened to their mother, because obviously they don't think their mother was flung down a set of stairs at their stepdad. So like in their head, and again, this is something they could have explained in Ghost Dimension with the videos of the past, is, were they then, did they think Grandma Lois was their mother? But then in the third film, they say, oh no, I ended up with all these tapes after Grandma Lois died. So you're like, okay, maybe not. But like, or did one of the other members of the cult adopt them?
That's what I was asking him before we got on. Like, what happened to Katie and Kristi after their parents died?
There's that whole gap that after they went, let's get ready, to the point of them turn up in Ghost Dimension. You're like, well, how? And there's the guy in Ghost Dimension. I always forget his name. I don't know if it's Kevin or Keith or the guy who's the cult leader.
Yeah,
it's given Charles Manson. Is it Keith?
Something like no, it's not Keith.
It's something plain.
It's
he feels like a father figure to them at times. And again, I say again, in the deleted scenes, you see a lot more of it. But so I always think, this is something that we could have had that extra film in between, which was set during these times, that kind of gave you more of that background into how they became who they were. Because that bit is the most that feels disconjointed. You're like, okay, so now that Toby's here, what happens to the kids? Like, does this timeline get erased because they brought Toby back in the 70s or wherever it was, that when they went back into, like, that's when it gets too much, when you could have not got so convoluted and just had seeing their adult life. Because there was tapes, we saw the tapes in 3 at the beginning that was like 1992, like Katie's 16th birthday, and you're like, we're ready to see them now.
I'm even curious about like the 20-year-old Katie. Like what happened in between that time? Like, yeah, like you're like, did she forget? Were they brainwashed to forget? I'm confused. Like, I need that. Katie needs another movie. She's obviously waiting.
And we're waiting. I think she stopped acting now as well, Katie Featherson.
That's absolutely,
because I reached out to a lot of people in the Paranormal Activity franchise, and I was like, if you ever want to come on, so there's somebody who's replied, which I'll tell you when we stop filming. So if that transpires, I'll make sure you're back on for that one. But like, yeah, I'm just like, we need. So this brings me on to kind of my little final moment for you. Obviously, disregard the film that you haven't seen yet, because it's a different thing. But where would you, if you having your say, where would you like to see the future of the franchise? Do you feel like it is done? Is there a spin-off you'd like most likely to see? Or, I mean, we've got Paramount Plus now. Give us a Paramount Plus show. Like,
I think that you have the script for the next movie.
I mean, where is the Midwives TV show?
But yeah, no, we do deserve
Midwives miniseries.
Like, we literally could watch the Midwives rise as a cult, take over America or whatever country they want to take over. Like, there are so many things that can be done. Bring back Katie. Where is Robbie? What happened to little Robbie?
Okay. So I do have. I don't know if did you watch the alternative ending I sent you?
Yes.
Okay. So I believe, and it was they kind of said that is that, so for those of you who don't know, there's an alternative ending to Ghost Dimension where they stop Toby when they're doing the circle. And like, it's over, great. And then we skip to like 3 weeks later, or 3 months later, where the family have moved house again. And suddenly out of nowhere, Katie and Kristi turn up, and little Lylia's like, "Look, Mommy, my friends are here," and you're like, "What the hell?" And then suddenly it cuts again, as always, and ends up at this party where it's Lilia. Is it her name? Lilia? Lilia's birthday party, and she's like, and she says she wishes for a baby brother, and then that guy picks up and says, "Oh, well done," and we see that her mum is pregnant. So I believe that she's pregnant with Robbie.
Okay.
And then that's in my head, that's what I tried to force myself to believe, so that it kind of made sense, and that Robbie was connected in a way to the story, and then was taken back with Katie and into, but then, and maybe it's just me really clutching at straws to try and find an excuse, because Robbie just disappears halfway the film and then comes back.
We never hear, like,
makes sense to me.
One scene that stuck out to me that I feel like could be interesting is in the marked ones, whenever they're like, they, drop the camera into Anna's little vent or whatever, and she like, there's like a woman and she's like painting the like sign on her or whatever. And like, I'm curious about their like recruitment process, I guess. Like, I would like to see them actively like recruiting these moms. Like, give us a Jesse's mom spinoff,
To see, I thought you were saying you wanted to join.
Well, of course, that goes without saying.
Sign me up, Mommy.
Like, that goes without saying, but I like anything with the women. Just give me the women.
Yeah,
that's what I want.
We don't care about Toby as much. We just want the women.
That franchise changed the moment that Dennis turned on that light on the camera in the garage in 3. Like, that was when it was like, oh, this is something else now, and felt so much bigger. And the fact that they kind of made it big at the end of 4, like, here is probably 100 extras, and you're like, Jesus, and then never to then drop that and then have the main person be the head of the midwives to be a man in Ghost. I was like,
it should have been
Grandma Lois in the photo? She was in the photos with the mum. Like, she was, to me, the head of the coven.
Where is the Grandma Lois movie?
Martine should have joined the cult. Okay,
that would have been Martine. Should have been in the marked ones. Like, that would have, if she was like the
oh my God,
if she was like the auntie of like.
You just blew my mind with that.
Like, there was so many like aspects that were like, I mean, I won't slag off the marked ones because that was a great film, but even that, there was those moments that you're like, they're literally it's spoon feeding. And again, I know I sound like Richie from Scream 5, but it's like, come on. It was there.
It's right there. It's right
like
there.
In grasp of like having this like crazy, spend a ridiculous amount of money on the last 10 minutes of the final film and have this huge moment where it's this whole coven versus, a few people, and you've got, as I say, you've got Ali, and it just feels like, and even if they lose, even if Ali I don't need them to win. I just need to see a moment where you feel like this is what it's been leading up to, and Ghost Dimension didn't feel like that to me.
Whenever we were watching, like when we finished Ghost Dimension, I was like, okay, like I get it, but now like thinking about like the possibilities, I can understand why there's some disappointment in the fandom for how it maybe didn't stick the landing. So that, this is an interesting conversation. I'll be interested. I really want to do a marathon of all of them now, like back to back in one sitting.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how I feel about them all after that.
And you should try and watch them in chronological order as well, because that's quite fun. So watching like 3, 1, the 3, 2, 1, and so on, because that kind of adds like another element to it, which is
it's like kind of meta.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do that,
to see it.
That's interesting.
But yeah, so that's kind of, I don't want to end on a hey, let's try and add on, we need to end on a positive, because that we're all like deflated, like, oh well. But guys, like, just give me your final round-out thoughts on the Final Destination. Jesus Christ, I'm saying,
oh my God,
not me. We were talking about Paranormal Activity.
Oh, like, let's get into
now.
that.
If he was the cult, he should have been the dad in Ghost Dimension, because that dad was given.
Could have been daddy.
There would have been no complaints from us.
Absolutely not. So, no. Any final overall thoughts on the franchise, just in general?
I just think the franchise is so fun with how it went from being something that was really scary to something that is continually scary. So I feel like at the end they want to focus more on the jump scares, which is fine. But this franchise is full of so many jump scares, and he is a little jumping being.
I jump at
And
everything.
he literally flies out of his seat in these reactions. It is so
It's so
funny to
funny.
watch. But I just think that they're fun.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the word I was
they're a
going to
good
use
time.
too. And creative. Like for me, it's really the creativity, like I said, just seeing how they're going to execute each one. And I think the performances are usually really good too.
Mhm.
So even if the storyline like maybe isn't always giving 100% of the time, usually the actors are selling it, and that's enough for me. And they're different enough. Like the family dynamics, I was thinking through, none of the movies have the same like main character dynamics.
Right.
They either add a pet or a child or two little girls or two annoying high schoolers that just graduated, you know, or whatever. Like it's just they tried, I feel like, to make them all feel consistent but different, and I appreciate that.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a franchise, it and in horror, it did hold its own for a while and really did give, like, it was just something new that we hadn't seen before. And for though, you know, I think I say a lot of people did kind of dismiss it because they thought, oh, it's found footage and how many times can you do the same film? But I have to say, there was lots of elements of the like that from even from the first film that as I watched the rest, it's like a fun tick box. You're like, okay, we've got the dragon down the stairs, we've got like the camera pan into something, like there was like a little thing that you tick each time.
Rites
you know,
of passage.
Yeah, that would mean you like this is what makes those films, the Paranormal Activity films.
A
And
Katie
so
cameo. Hopefully.
yeah, exactly. That's like they were all things that, although the films may have had different stories, they had key elements that link them all together. And I think that is really great that they continue to do them. And just like kudos to Oren Pelly for just sitting there one day and going like, I want to do a film in my house, and then like having no idea like that it would be as big as it became, because regardless of what anybody says out there, it was successful. Especially go and read the newspapers, bitch. Okay, it's like one of the most like
it's called Google.
Yeah, Google it. It's like one of the most profitable movies of all time. So, and the franchise as a horror franchise did really well. So you've got to give it to them for that. And who knows, maybe, I mean, they reboot everything these days. So maybe in another 5 years, maybe we can get something.
We will.
They will. It'll be.
It's easy to make, cheap to make. They will come back to it.
I'd like to.
I'm begging.
Yeah.
But call George first.
Yeah,
call me. We'll talk about the timeline. We'll get Katie back. We'll get a Dennis cameo in there. Like, even if it's just an old videotape. Could you imagine Dennis having like a Randy style videotape explaining something?
Oh,
that's literally anything to get him back. Like, I don't care. There's time travel now. It doesn't matter.
No.
As long as you can make it to where I understand how it happened, then I'm good.
Just restart it. So something happens and then everyone's back, and
yeah, like Toby come into life has like reset the timeline, and so we go back to the beginning, and that means that and also Dennis didn't die. He may have snapped his back, but I think it was just
all the time.
a bit of a crack.
Fine.
And could you imagine him in like the last film coming out in like a wheelchair? But he's still got the grey joggers on, so that's the main thing.
Oh,
that's all that matters.
A warm, soft pretzel.
And that is, if there is one way to end a Paranormal Activity discussion with Petty Pumpkins, it's about the pretzel of Dennis in his grey joggers. So I want to say thank you so much to Wes and Jay for joining me today. I've had an absolute blast because it's so nice to finally talk about this franchise with someone, because nobody else wants to talk about it with me. So I'm absolutely blessed. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having us. We love this franchise also, so your excitement is just
Yeah, I feel like we haven't like really sat down and analyzed this franchise as a whole until we were prepping for this, and so then like the research we did plus what you have said, I feel like I have like a really good kind of idea of what it is now.
Right.
And I like that. So thanks, George.
No, it's iconic. And I have to say, like, your Paranormal Activity reactions are fantastic. They got me, like, I was one of those annoying commenters that's like, when's the next one? Because I was just like, I was so excited to watch them. And I've said it for like all of your reactions. Like, I think I'm messaged you once saying, like, I was like, I'm obsessed. I want to live in your house because when the way that the lighting and just like it's so. I mean, it's crazy now because you've got natural light coming in. I'm like shocked. I'm like normally
Yeah.
it's like dark
So
and
dark.
like it's so like comforting. So your all of your actions bring me so much comfort. I love like getting into bed with a cup of tea and some sweets. And I'm just like, let's stick on Petty Pumpkins. And it's
Aw,
great.
well, thank
So,
you.
I appreciate it. And thank you very much to everyone who's watching and watched. Do let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are on the Paranormal Activity franchise. Did you like it? Have you watched all of it? If not, are you going to now? Did we convince you? And would you like to see more of it? What was your favorite bits, favorite characters? Let us all know in the comments below because I'm intrigued to see what the consensus is overall. Because I feel like it's been enough time now for people to see it and kind of see. I don't know. I'm thrilled. So let's see. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, we will see. Oh, I did that bloody bit at the end, haven't I? For God's sake. Sorry, everyone. Your attacker's probably screaming through the window. As always, please do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at The Horror Hour TV. You can always follow us on Patreon. Link in the description below. We get early access to our episodes, after hours, and also live watch-alongs. And Petty Pumpkins, where can the people find you?
Pretty much everywhere at Petty Pumpkins.
Yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel first and foremost. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Petty Pumpkins.
We're there.
We'll be there.
They're there, being iconic. So yes, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here again, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Horror Hour. See you next time.